Prince Louis is 8.
Prince Louis is clearly a delightful character, full of energies, full of beans. He clearly finds these photo opportunities very exciting.
Every year on the 23rd of April, something very specific happens inside the Wales household. And no, it's not just cake, it's not just balloons, it's not even just the carefully orchestrated birthday photo that eventually lands on the royal family's official social media pages and breaks the internet for about 45 minutes before everyone moves on with their lives. No, every year, on Prince Louis's birthday, something else happens. Something that the public never gets to see. Something that has become so embedded in the DNA of how this family celebrates that it almost doesn't matter what gift gets chosen, because the experience of the gift has become the actual gift. We're talking about a tradition that started with Princess Diana, a tradition passed down through friendship, through loyalty, through laughter, and, let's be completely honest, through a very deliberate, very calculated desire to watch Prince William suffer, in the most affectionate way possible, of course. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you're going to understand something about the Wales family that the palace press office will never put in a statement. You're going to understand the private language of how they celebrate each other, how they keep the memory of Diana alive, and why, every single year, Prince William finds himself on the floor surrounded by instruction manuals, plastic parts, and what can only be described as deep, personal regret. Let's start from the beginning. The boy who turns 8. On the 23rd of April this year, Prince Louis Arthur Charles, third child of Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, turns 8 years old. 8. Let that land for a moment, because if you have been paying even the slightest attention to this child over the years, you already know that Prince Louis is not a child who goes unnoticed. This is the boy who, at the Platinum Jubilee pageant in 2022, sat on the Buckingham Palace balcony and entertained the entire world without saying a single word, pulling faces, covering his mother's mouth, waving with the commitment of someone who has decided waving is actually a performance art. The cameras could not look away from him. This is the boy who, at the coronation of King Charles, was seen whispering things to his mother that we will probably never know and honestly don't need to, because the expression on Catherine's face told the whole story. This is the child who exists at the absolute center of gravity of a family that is, in many ways, trying to be as normal as it possibly can while being one of the most scrutinized families on the planet. And every year, on this boy's birthday, the family retreats. There are no public appearances, no walkabouts, no scheduled engagements, just a family, at home, doing what families do. Except that what this family does includes something that has been quietly carrying the fingerprints of Princess Diana for over 2 decades. The tradition that Diana started. Here is where we need to go back, because to understand what happens on Louis's birthday, you have to understand something about who Diana was as a person. Not as a princess, not as a public figure, but as a friend. Diana, Princess of Wales, was by all accounts someone who loved to laugh. Not the polished, public-facing laugh that was carefully calibrated for cameras and formal engagements, but the real kind. The kind that came out when she was comfortable, when she was among people she trusted, when the formality fell away and she was just a person in a room with the people she loved. One of those people was Julia Samuel. Julia Samuel was one of Diana's closest friends.
So many questions unanswered. But I'm hoping by having
a grief counselor, a woman of extraordinary warmth and steadiness, someone who was part of Diana's inner circle during the most turbulent years of her life. And when Diana died in 1997, Julia Samuel became one of the people who helped carry the weight of that loss, not just personally, but in service to the children Diana left behind. Julia Samuel is now one of Prince George's godparents. She is still connected to this family in the most intimate and enduring way, and she is the person who has kept alive a very specific tradition that Diana used to practice. Here's what Diana used to do. When she wanted to give a gift to the children of her close friends, including Julia's own children, she would deliberately choose something that was maximally inconvenient for the adults. Toys that were noisy, toys that required extensive assembly, toys that arrived in boxes with more pieces than seemed strictly necessary, with instruction manuals that appeared to have been translated from one language into 3 others before landing in English, and with a final result that was loud, flashy, and absolutely irresistible to a child. The point was not the toy. Well, the point was also the toy. But the real point was the experience of watching the adults deal with it. Diana found this funny. Genuinely, deeply, delightedly funny. Now think about that for a second. This is a woman who spent so much of her life navigating grief, pressure, scrutiny, and emotional difficulty. And one of the ways she expressed joy, one of the ways she connected with the people she loved, was through the gift of laughter, through the deliberate engineering of a slightly chaotic situation that everyone would end up laughing about, together. That is a very specific kind of love, and it has not gone away. Julia Samuel carries the torch. So what happened when Diana was gone? What happened to this tradition? Julia Samuel kept it going. She began doing the same thing, choosing deliberately complicated, deliberately noisy, deliberately assembly-required toys for the children in her life. And as her connection to the Wales family deepened through her role as godparent to Prince George, that tradition found its way into a new generation: Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. Julia Samuel, speaking on the How to Fail podcast, described the gifts in a way that is both hilarious and completely clarifying. She said the toys are really noisy and take a lot of making. She said this with the energy of someone who understands exactly what she is doing and has absolutely no intention of stopping. Nah. And then she said something that completes the picture entirely. She said that William then spends days putting them together. Days, not hours. Days. Let's sit with that for a moment. Prince William, future King of England, Colonel-in-Chief of multiple regiments, man who has piloted military aircraft and led air ambulance operations, spends days on the floor of his home, surrounded by plastic components and pictorial instructions, trying to assemble a toy for his youngest child. And according to Julia, the rest of the family finds this part quite amusing. Quite amusing. That is the most restrained possible way to describe what is almost certainly a scene of pure, wholesome domestic comedy. Catherine, presumably, watching from a comfortable distance. George and Charlotte also presumably watching with the focused interest of people who are deeply entertained and have no intention of helping. And Louis, the recipient of this gift, watching with whatever particular flavor of enthusiasm an almost 8-year-old brings to the knowledge that something very loud and very complicated is being built specifically for him. Why this matters more than it seems. Now here is where we need to pause, because this could be read as a light, fun anecdote about birthday traditions. And it is that. But it is also something more. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis never met Diana, Princess of Wales. She died in 1997, a decade before any of them were born. They know her through photographs, through stories, through the way their father speaks about her, which by William's own admission has taken time. He has spoken publicly about how difficult it was to talk about his mother in the early years after her death, and how he has had to consciously work at making sure his children understand who she was. He has spoken about wanting them to know her not as a symbol, not as a cultural icon, not as the abstract figure on the newspaper front page, but as a person, as his mum, as someone who laughed, who played, who was mischievous, who loved people in very specific and personal ways. And this is where the birthday tradition becomes something genuinely moving when you really think about it. Every year, when Julia Samuel shows up with that box, the complicated one, the noisy one, the one that comes with more parts than should be legal, she is not just giving Louis a toy. She is bringing Diana into the room. She is carrying a piece of Diana's personality forward through time. The mischief is Diana's. The deliberate inconvenience is Diana's. The laughter that follows is, in some small but real way, Diana's. William spends days on the floor building that toy. And maybe, while he's doing it, he thinks about his mother, about the fact that this is exactly the kind of thing she would have loved, about the fact that the person who started this is gone, but the laughter she engineered is still happening, in a different house, with different children, with a different generation. And maybe that is the whole point. The birthday routine. What we know. Let's talk about what Louis's birthday actually looks like, from the outside, because the contrast between the public-facing version and what we now know about the private version is part of what makes this story so compelling. The Wales family keeps the children's birthdays deliberately private. This is a pattern that William and Catherine have established very deliberately over the years, and it reflects a broader philosophy about how they want to raise their children. The idea is that the children should have a private life, that there should be spaces, real, protected spaces, where they are not public figures, where they are just kids having birthdays. On the day itself, there are no public engagements. William and Catherine do not appear on the steps of somewhere important, looking polished and giving carefully worded statements about how their child is growing up so fast. There is no official program, no public celebration, just a family at home. What the public does get is a photograph, a single image, usually taken by Catherine herself, who has become a genuinely accomplished photographer over the years, released through the royal family's official channels. These photos have become their own kind of tradition. They are almost always warm, natural, candid in feeling if not always in reality. They show a child who looks like a child. Messy hair, genuine smile, caught in a moment that feels private, even though it is being shared with the world. Catherine has spoken about her approach to the birthdays in terms of the cake specifically, noting that she bakes the children's cakes herself and that she often finishes them late the night before. This detail is one of those things that could easily be dismissed as a talking point, but actually reveals something genuine. She is doing it herself, late at night, not delegating it to a palace chef, not outsourcing it to a professional bakery, but staying up and doing it with her own hands, because that is what she wants the birthday to feel like for her children. That is a very deliberate choice. It is the choice of someone who understands the difference between a birthday that happens and a birthday that is made. Enter the gift, and then, alongside the cake baked the night before, alongside the private day, alongside the single photo, there is the gift from Julia Samuel, the noisy one, the complicated one, the one that requires time, patience, and a fair amount of assembly. Think about what that means for a child turning 8. An 8-year-old is old enough to have very specific interests, old enough to know exactly what they want, old enough to look at a box and feel genuine, escalating excitement as they understand what is inside it, but young enough that the gap between seeing the toy in its completed form and actually having the toy in its completed form is an eternity. An agonizing, almost unbearable eternity of watching someone else assemble the thing that is supposed to be yours. And that person is Prince William, who is reportedly taking days. Do you see how this works? The child is right there. The toy is right there. It's been right there, technically, since Julia handed over the box. And yet it is not accessible, because it requires assembly, and the assembly takes days. And William is apparently the designated assembler. And every day that passes is another day of Louis knowing that the gift exists and not yet being able to use it. This is, from a certain angle, slightly diabolical. Diana would have absolutely loved it. Louis, the perfect recipient. Here's something important. This gift works especially well for Louis, not just because he's a child and children like toys, but because of who Louis specifically is. From every glimpse the public has had of this child, at formal events, in the birthday photographs, in the occasional unguarded moment that cameras have caught, Louis presents as someone with enormous energy. He is expressive, he is physical, he is the kind of child who is present in a room in a way that is immediately obvious to everyone in it. He is not a child who sits quietly and waits for things to come to him. He engages, he participates, he makes his opinions known, often through facial expressions that communicate precisely what words would take twice as long to say. A toy that has lights, sounds, and constant movement, which is how Julia Samuel has described the end result of these assembly projects, is not a random choice for this child. It is an exact match. It is the kind of thing that will hold his attention, that will get used, that will become part of the landscape of his daily life in the way that really good toys do. And the fact that he has to wait for it, that the experience of anticipating it is built into the gift itself, is part of what makes it memorable. Years from now, Louis won't just remember the toy. He'll remember watching his dad build it. He'll remember the days of waiting. He'll remember the moment it was finally done and he could actually use it. The experience is the gift. That's what Diana understood, and that's what Julia Samuel has been patiently proving for years. What it looks like from inside the palace. Now let's imagine, because we have to imagine since we're not there and never will be, what these days of assembly actually look like. William on the floor. Instruction manual open. Several identical-looking pieces laid out in what the manual insists is a logical order. A moment of confidence, early on, where it seems like this might actually be straightforward. Then a piece that doesn't fit where the manual says it should fit. A return to page 1. A recount of the pieces to establish that all pieces are present. They are. Another attempt. Another moment of misplaced confidence. Meanwhile, somewhere nearby, Louis. Checking in. Asking how it's going. Being told it's going fine. Nearly done. Maybe tomorrow. Accepting this with the specific kind of resigned frustration that only children can produce. The look that communicates absolute disbelief at the incompetence of the adults around them, while maintaining just enough social awareness not to say so directly. Charlotte and George, presumably, finding the entire situation educational in ways that have nothing to do with the toy. Catherine, baking something, checking in periodically, making no effort to conceal her amusement. And William, still on the floor, aware that this is funny, aware that this is the point, and committing to the task anyway, because this is what the tradition requires, and because the tradition is not really about the toy, it's about something much larger. The question you should be asking. Here's a question worth sitting with. Why does William keep accepting the gift? He knows what's coming. Every year, he knows. Julia Samuel has been doing this for years. The pattern is established. The outcome is predictable. At this point, William has assembled enough of these toys to know exactly what he is signing up for when that box comes through the door. And yet, he does it every year. Why? There are a few possible answers, and they are not mutually exclusive. The first is simple, because Louis loves it, because the end result, the completed toy, the lights, the sounds, the movement, genuinely delights his son. And what parent, regardless of title or circumstance, would deprive their child of that delight just to save themselves a few days of frustration? The second is more layered, because it connects him to his mother. Because every year, sitting on that floor with those instructions, he is participating in something that Diana started. Something that carries her mischief, her laughter, her particular genius for making people feel loved through inconvenience. The frustration is, in its own strange way, a form of closeness to her. The third is perhaps the most important, because this is what family looks like in the Wales household. Not the formal occasions, not the public moments, not the carefully staged photographs, though those have their own value. Family looks like Catherine baking a cake at midnight. Family looks like a birthday that the public cannot attend. Family looks like William on the floor, surrounded by pieces, being quietly laughed at by the people he loves most. This is the private texture of their life, and it is, genuinely, beautiful. Diana's legacy in the everyday. Prince William has been thoughtful and deliberate about how he keeps Diana's memory present for his children. He has spoken about this in interviews, carefully, with the kind of measured honesty that suggests he has thought about it a great deal. The challenge, as he has described it, is making someone real to children who never met her, making sure that the Diana his children know is a person, not a legend. Stories help, personal stories, told in the ordinary moments of daily life, not in formal lectures about heritage and history. The kind of stories that reveal personality, that tell you what someone laughed at, what they cared about, what made them light up. The gift tradition is one of those stories. Every year when Julia Samuel shows up with the box, she is telling a story about Diana.
The message is that all of us are going to know someone that's going to die, and we have to face our own death.
Not in words, but in action. She is saying, this is who she was. This is how she loved people. This is what made her laugh. And the children, including Louis, receive that story, not as information, but as experience. They don't just know that Diana liked to make adults laugh. They live it. They participate in it. They become part of the story. That is an extraordinarily thoughtful way to keep someone alive. And it is a credit to Julia Samuel's love for Diana and for this family that she has kept it going year after year. What happens on April 23rd? So here's what the 23rd of April will almost certainly look like this year, based on everything we know. The public will see a photograph. It will be beautiful. Catherine is a genuinely gifted photographer, and her birthday portraits of the children have a warmth and intimacy that professional studio shots almost never achieve. Louis will look happy, probably a little bit older than you expect, definitely still possessed of that particular energy that makes him unmistakable. The caption will be warm and brief. The Wales family account will post it. The internet will react, because the internet always reacts to Louis, because Louis gives it a great deal to work with. There will be comments about how fast he's growing. There will be comments about how much he looks like various members of the family, with slightly competing factions unable to agree on whether he's the image of William or Diana, or someone else entirely. There will be warmth and a little noise, and then things will move on. What the public will not see is the rest of it. They will not see Catherine putting the finishing touches on a birthday cake sometime late on the 22nd, quietly, in a kitchen that is probably both more and less impressive than you're imagining. They will not see the moment the gift from Julia Samuel is opened. They will not see Louis's face when he understands what's inside. They will not see the particular expression he makes when he's told that it needs to be assembled first, and that it might take a few days. They will not see William sitting down with the instructions, fully aware of what is coming, committing to it anyway. They will not see Charlotte and George in whatever observational position they have claimed. They will not see Catherine, amused, choosing not to intervene. They will not see any of that. And that is exactly right. That is exactly how it should be. Because some things belong to the family, and the fact that we know about this tradition, thanks to Julia Samuel speaking candidly on a podcast, thanks to the rare and valuable moments when these private details surface, is already more than we are strictly entitled to. It is a gift in itself, a glimpse into something real. The broader picture, why traditions like this matter. Let's take a step back for a moment, because there's something worth saying about why stories like this resonate the way they do. People are drawn to the royal family for complicated reasons. The pageantry and the ceremony and the history are all part of it. But if you ask most people what they actually want to know, what they actually find themselves curious about, it's not the formal occasions, it's not the state visits, it's not the precise etiquette of a particular kind of diplomatic engagement. It's this. It's the birthday cake baked the night before. It's the toy that takes days to assemble. It's the laughter that the cameras never catch. It's the sense that behind the photographs and the protocols, there are actual human beings who love each other and argue with each other and find each other funny and keep each other's memories alive. The tradition that Diana started and Julia Samuel has continued is deeply human.
Julia Samuel and Princess Diana knew each other for just a few short years, but formed a close friendship.
It is not a royal tradition, it is a person tradition. It belongs to the category of things that families do across every background and every circumstance. The private jokes, the recurring rituals, the things that get repeated year after year, not because they have to be, but because they have become part of the language of that particular group of people. The fact that this particular family also happens to live in a palace and appear on postage stamps does not make the tradition less human. If anything, it makes it more affecting, because it is a reminder that at the core of even the most formally structured public life, there are people sitting on floors with instruction manuals, being laughed at by their children, doing it out of love. A final thought about Louis. Prince Louis turns 8 this year. He is at an age where he is old enough to understand more than adults sometimes give him credit for, and young enough that the world is still largely made of magic and possibility and the absolute confidence that things will work out. He doesn't know, consciously, the full weight of the tradition he participates in every birthday. He doesn't know, in the way an adult would know, that the gift from Julia Samuel carries Diana's fingerprints. He doesn't know that the laughter in the room on the day William is still assembling it is a kind of inheritance. He doesn't know that someday he will tell his own children about it, or that someday it will be one of the stories that makes his grandmother real to him. He just knows that there is a gift, and it is noisy, and it does things, and Dad is still putting it together, and it has been days, and he has checked in about it several times already. And this is somehow the situation. But that's how it works, isn't it? The meaning of a tradition is not always visible in the moment. You live it first. You understand it later. And by the time you understand it fully, you are already part of it in a way you can't undo, which is exactly the point. On the 23rd of April, Prince Louis turns 8. Somewhere, a box is waiting, and somewhere, Prince William is already preparing himself for what comes next. We'll see the photograph. We'll see the smile. The rest of it, the cake, the instructions, the laughter, the ghost of Diana present in the room because Julia Samuel made sure she would be, that belongs to them. And honestly, that's exactly how it should be. If this story moved you, share it with someone who understands what it means to keep someone alive through the small, repeated acts of love. Drop a comment below. What is a tradition in your family that started with someone who's no longer here? Let's talk about it.